day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's Life Sciences lesson. My name is Vedika Maraj and this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Cybono Discovery Center. Feel free to contact us on our WhatsApp line on 063 508 1301. Please remember that you should only type your questions or your comments, and please do not send voice notes or videos or images. Today we are going to be covering the menstrual cycle. So we are still doing human reproduction, which forms part of paper 1, and we are doing one of the subtopics there, which is called the menstrual cycle. So, as always, we start with our examination guideline. What is this lesson going to be about, and what are all the bullets that you need to know when you need to study for this section? So, like I mentioned, it forms part of paper 1, and this is what we are going to be discussing today. Firstly, it's important to note that the menstrual cycle is made up of the uterine and the ovarian cycles, and you need to know the events of the ovarian cycle, the events of the uterine cycle, and you need to know the hormonal control of the menstrual cycle, and you also need to know the negative feedback of some of our hormones in controlling the production of ova. Okay, so I'm not going to go in lots of detail now. When I explain the presentation, you're going to see at the end that we are going to cover all of these bullets. Make sure that when you practice for this section, you make sure that you can do activities on all of the bullets that are here, questions that are based on all of the bullets that are mentioned here, because this is the questions that we're going to be asked. Right, before we go into very much further into the menstrual cycle, I think let us first discuss a little bit about our prior knowledge on the menstrual cycle. So when is the first time that you actually heard about menstruation? Think a little bit back. Okay, so menstrual cycle should give you an indication that we're talking about menstruation. And where did you learn menstruation? In grade 9, when you did puberty. Okay, so when females reach puberty, then they go through this process, a monthly cycle, which is called the menstrual cycle. It occurs for 28 days, from day 0 to day 28, and then it starts again after day 28 from day 1. Okay, and one of the events that take place in this menstrual cycle is called menstruation. So that is when the female is going to be bleeding through the vagina during a certain time period of the month. Okay, so what is this menstrual cycle? So what is exactly it's a series of natural changes that occur in hormone production and in the structures in the uterus and the ovaries, and it's all in preparation for possible pregnancy, or it's also the reason why it's there is to ensure that pregnancy is possible. Okay, how does it do this? Because as you've learned also from grade 9 is that in the female reproductive system, what happens is that we have an ovum that is produced, and that ovum gets fertilized by a sperm cell, and after that occurs, we have fertilization then occurs, and then we have the development of the embryo. So you went into a little bit more detail, but we're going to back it up now. We're going to talk more about this development of this ovum. And then you also know that when menstruation occurs, it's because fertilization did not occur, and that ovum is now expelled together with the endometrium. That is the blood that is being expelled through the vagina. Okay, so now you know what the menstrual cycle is, and you know a little bit more about it. Now, I sort of explained it here. Let's look at this little animation. It's just started now in the center. I want it to start again. Let's wait a second. There we go. You can see something is happening in the ovaries. You can see the ovum is coming down, and now it's being expelled with the endometrium. The reason why I also put this animation here is to show you and to remind you about the human reproductive system, the female reproductive system. Can you see we have this lampshade diagram where we've got the ovaries, our arms of the fallopian tubes, and then we have the uterus. Okay, so that is the structure. So the menstrual cycle is made up of 2 cycles. It's the ovarian cycle and it's the uterine cycle, and it progresses over a period of 28 days. Now, before we can go any further on what happens exactly in the menstrual cycle, we need to learn about the hormones that are involved in the menstrual cycle, because all of the hormones make everything in the menstrual cycle possible. So we have hormones that are going to stimulate processes to occur, and going to stimulate structures to be developed and processes to occur. Okay, and when we talk about hormones, we need to know the gland that secretes the hormone, we need to know the name of the hormone, and we need to know the function of the hormone. So if we know all of this first, then it's easier when we are going through the menstrual cycle to see where do all of these things fit in. Okay, so you already know that we are going to be looking at the ovary, and we're going to be looking at the uterus, the changes that occur there. So the first one, we have the pituitary gland. Now you might not know the pituitary gland, but I'm going to tell you. The pituitary gland is a small little gland that is located in the brain, okay, and it secretes hormones. The two hormones that we're going to discuss today is going to be FSH and LH. These two are pituitary gland hormones. FSH standing for follicle stimulating hormone and LH for luteinizing hormone. So what I want you to have a look here is that you can see that there's an abbreviation here and over here. These abbreviations are accepted abbreviations and you may use them in the exam. But it's also important for you to know what they stand for. It helps you with understanding the process. What is the function of this follicle stimulating hormone? It stimulates the development and the growth of the follicle, okay? And that's important to know because now you see how the name is assisting you with that function. Because follicle stimulating hormone, it stimulates the development and the growth of the follicle, okay? I'm going to explain to you what the follicles are now that we are talking about, but let's just get the hormones first, right? The next one is LH, which is luteinizing hormone. This stimulates ovulation. Okay, it's one function. First function is that it stimulates ovulation, and the second function is that it stimulates the conversion of the empty Graafian follicle into a corpus luteum. Okay, I'm just going to make a note here for corpus luteum so that you can remember it for when we're going to be looking at it later. Then we've got other two hormones which are now called our ovarian hormones, okay? And where specifically in the ovary are they secreted by? Developing follicle as well as the Graafian follicle. I want you to remember that word as well, very important one, the Graafian follicle. And it also has another structure which is the corpus luteum, which is found in the ovary. These two structures are going to secrete hormones. The developing follicle and the Graafian follicle are going to secrete estrogen, and that's responsible for thickening of the endometrium, and the corpus luteum is going to secrete progesterone, which maintains the thickness of the endometrium. It maintains the thickness of the endometrium. Then we've got the placenta. The placenta isn't really a gland, it's actually a temporary organ that is developed during pregnancy, and it lasts for the duration of pregnancy. That's why in brackets there I've put pregnancy, and it secretes progesterone, and this maintains pregnancy by maintaining the thickness of the endometrium. Okay, now make sure you understand those hormones and you remember them. Okay, if you can keep these functions one side. You have them somewhere in your notebook or your textbook because you've already learned this at school. You keep it one side, so when I'm explaining the cycle, you can always refer to what the functions of these hormones are. Oh, and then we come to this very lovely mnemonic, FOLP, and that stands for the different hormones. Okay, and it's the reason why it's FOLP is because it's telling us the sequence in which the hormones are playing a role in the menstrual cycle. So we first have FSH, then we have estrogen, then we have LH, and then we have progesterone. Okay. Right, so like I said, the menstrual cycle is made up of the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle. In this lesson, I'm going to be repeating myself a lot, okay? But it's because I'm going to take you through a number of different ways of teaching this, because we're all different and all learners are different, and hopefully out of the 3 different ways I'm going to be teaching this to you, one of them is going to make you understand, or all of them. Right, so let's first look deeper into the ovarian cycle. So what we have here is the structure of the ovary. Okay, do you remember this from last week? We did the structure of the ovary. It was with Nonhlanhla and Samantha. And what we have over here is, what I want to bring to your attention now is that this ovary has blood vessels coming into it. I just want you to have a look here. Can you see there's blood vessels? And all this blue, wherever you see this blue and red, that's indicating to us blood vessels. Because hormones are traveled via the blood. Okay, that's a very important point that learners don't seem to understand or to know, is that that hormones actually travel via the blood. Now, there is no, obviously this is the ovary, so we can't see the pituitary gland, but we do know there's a pituitary gland also that's involved, right? Because I spoke to you earlier about the hormones. And what are the two hormones that are secreted by the pituitary gland? It's FSH and LH. You can see the black arrow that I have there, and I've got a yellow arrow. That is showing you the hormones that are coming into the ovary via the blood system. But the pituitary gland is showing you now where they actually come from. Okay. Now, this is where we start. We start at FSH. Because remember what I told you was the function of FSH? It's follicle stimulating hormone. It develops the follicles. Now, what do I mean by follicle? Do you remember oogenesis? Right? Last week we also did oogenesis, and you remember they said that we have these follicles that are developed throughout the whole process of oogenesis, right? So this is where you must not forget about oogenesis. I'm also going to write it here for you so that you can make a note for yourself. Don't forget about oogenesis, okay? Remember that. Now we've got these numerous follicles. You can see them over there. And these numerous follicles are developing because of FSH. So the pituitary gland secretes FSH. The FSH causes these numerous follicles to develop. Then eventually, what do you know from oogenesis? You are going to have 4 cells at the end, but 3 are going to disappear or degenerate, and 1 is going to continue to grow and mature. Right? So that is where we get this follicle over here that is going to carry on growing, right? Because of follicle stimulating hormone. But when this follicle is developing and when this the follicle is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it is secreting something. It is secreting estrogen. So this arrow, the green one, is showing you that it is secreting estrogen. Now, where is the ovum in this whole thing? The ovum is developing inside the follicle. Okay, that's another thing that learners don't seem to understand. That we have these numerous follicles, right? And then 3 degenerate. 1 is going to become mature, right? And 1 is going to become bigger, and it's going to contain the ovum, right? And that follicle is going to develop, and it's going to develop, and as it's developing because of FSH, it's going to secrete estrogen until it becomes a very big fat structure, which is called a Graafian follicle, and the ovum is inside there. And that Graafian follicle is obviously, you think about it, the bigger it is, the more hormones it can produce, right? So this big Graafian follicle is going to secrete estrogen and into the bloodstream, and then the estrogen is going to carry out its function. Okay, what did we say the function was again? I'm not going to say it, you must remember, right, for the next slide. Then what happens? This Graafian follicle is so big and it's so fat, and it's now releasing estrogen. And that surge of estrogen is going to cause something to happen. Whenever hormones spike, something happens. Okay? Another event occurs. So this is going to now cause LH. It's going to send estrogen, it's going to send the message to the pituitary gland to secrete LH, which is now the yellow one, the yellow arrow, right? LH is then going to be secreted, it's going to peak, it's going to have this dramatic increase, it's going to peak, and then it's going to stimulate ovulation to occur. Okay? And what is ovulation? The Graafian follicle is now big, it's fat, it's going to move towards the surface of the ovary, and then it's going to rupture, or it's going to burst. Okay? And when it does that, it releases the ovum. So this is we have here, we've got ovulation, it releases the ovum. Okay? Before we carry on, what's going to happen to that ovum? Now this is where you can link back to your grade 9, right? What's going to happen to this ovum? Now remember, the fallopian tube has fimbria. Those are like a funnel. It's like a funnel, right? That ovum is going to pop into the fimbria. The fimbria is going to collect it, right? And then it's going to travel down the fallopian tube via the cilia. Okay? So it travels down the fallopian tube, and it's going to wait there in the fallopian tube for fertilization too, for possible fertilization. But while it's waiting there, what's happening? something else is happening in the ovary. We're not done with the ovarian cycle. We are only at ovulation, which is day 14, by the way. Don't worry about the days for now. We'll go into it. So now what happens? What did I say is the second function of LH? The first function was stimulate ovulation. The second function was to stimulate the conversion of the Graafian follicle into the corpus luteum. So now we've got an empty follicle. Obviously, the ovum is now gone. So the follicle is empty. And now we are going to have the development of this corpus luteum. This corpus luteum is a big round structure as well, and it's going to secrete a hormone which is called progesterone. This hormone is called progesterone, and once again, think about what the function is, but for now you need to understand the corpus luteum is going to secrete progesterone, and it also secretes small amounts of estrogen. Thereafter, when the body is going to realize that fertilization did not take place, remember I said the ovum is sitting in the fallopian tube. Now, say for example, no sperm comes, or sperm comes but no fertilization occurs. What is going to happen? You know what's going to happen. The ovum needs to be expelled, right? But something must happen first. First, the corpus luteum must degenerate. Okay, so the message gets said, okay, there's no fertilization, so the corpus luteum must degenerate. And something you need to know for later. Think about it now. I have this big corpus luteum, it secreted a lot of progesterone, right? Now we've got a corpus luteum that degenerates. Does that mean it can still secrete progesterone? Think about it. Right. Let's go to the next one. Now we have the uterine cycle. So while the ovarian cycle is taking place and while the hormones are being used there and they have their specific role, something is happening to the uterus. Remember I told you the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle both form part of the menstrual cycle and they happen at the same time. Okay. So now we go to, this is now numbered very nicely for us. It's showing us the endometrium, reminding you that is the lining. The endometrium is in the uterus. It is the lining that gets developed every month. Okay. So from day, at point 1, they're showing us that the endometrium breaks down and releases and is released. And this is called menstruation. And it lasts for about 4 to 7 days. So you can see here, it's showing us at point 1 that it's breaking down. Then at 2, it shows us that the endometrium is stimulated by estrogen to become thicker and develop more blood vessels and glands. Then number 3, progesterone stimulates the endometrium to become even thicker and develop more blood vessels and glands. And this happens in preparation for possible implantation of the ovum. If fertilization does not take place, then this is number 4, the endometrium is going to tear away, resulting in menstruation. Okay, so while the ovarian cycle is going through its thing, the uterine cycle is also doing something, because remember, the ovary is going to produce hormones, and hormones have an effect on something. Remember I told you? So now those hormones are going to have an effect on the endometrium. Okay, so the next couple of slides, that is the one way of going into detail of the uterine and the ovarian cycle. Now I'm going to teach you the menstrual cycle with looking at the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle together. Okay? Right, so we start over here at day 1 to day 7. As you can see in the diagram, menstruation is occurring. And we start with the brain. Which part of the brain? The pituitary gland. It secretes FSH. And in the ovary, we're going to have the development of new follicles, and it's going to secrete estrogen. What's happening in the uterus from day 1 to 7? Menstruation is occurring. Okay? Then from day 8 to day 13, what is happening now? We are looking at the ovary. You can see in this picture, we are looking at the ovary. The Graafian follicle is going to develop, right? And it's going to move to the edge of the ovary, and it's going to secrete estrogen, large amounts of estrogen. What's going to happen in the uterus? The endometrium is going to become thicker and develop more blood vessels and glands. Then we have on day 14. Day 14 is a major event day. Okay, day 14 is a major event day. This is the day when ovulation occurs. Why is it occurring? Because now the pituitary gland is going to secrete LH. Because of the high estrogen, the pituitary gland is going to secrete LH, which stimulates ovulation. Right? The Graafian follicle bursts to release the ovum, and this process is called ovulation. From day 15 to day 22, now we've got the empty Graafian follicle. So what's happening in the ovary? The follicle becomes corpus luteum and secretes progesterone, and this is also because of LH. And in the uterus, the progesterone stimulates the endometrium to become more thicker and more glandular and more vascular. Okay, vascular means blood, more blood vessels, and glandular means development of more glands. Okay, so you can see in the picture over here, can you see how the endometrium is now gone thicker? So the picture is giving us an indication of what's happening. Okay, from day 23 to day 28. So now we've got this corpus luteum that is formed, right? So between day 23 and day 28, this is when the body is going to realize now, hey, wait a minute now, fertilization occurred or fertilization did not occur. So you know, if fertilization did not occur, it means menstruation will occur. But why? Why does menstruation occur? Because the corpus luteum is going to degenerate. And if it degenerates, it's not going to have progesterone. And if it cannot secrete progesterone and estrogen, what is going to maintain the lining? What's going to maintain the endometrium? Nothing. So those hormones drop, and then menstruation is going to occur. But if fertilization takes place, we don't want menstruation to occur, because where will the fertilized ovum implant? So we want progesterone and estrogen to stay high. How is it going to stay high? It's only going to stay high if there's a corpus luteum. So if fertilization does take place, the corpus luteum is going to remain active, it's going to continue to secrete progesterone, and it's going to be happy. But something else we need to take into consideration is when this happens and fertilization is occurring. Remember, what did I say is the whole point of the menstrual cycle? The whole point is to produce an ovum, right? And then for possible fertilization, for possible pregnancy. Okay, so every month the ovum is going to be released, expecting for the female to become pregnant. Okay, so if pregnancy did occur, if fertilization did occur, implantation is going to occur, do we need more follicles to be developed? No, we don't, because then we're going to have double pregnancy. Okay, and that can't happen. So no more follicles will develop and no menstruation will take place, because if the menstruation has to take place, then there's going to be no place for the embryo, the blastocyst, which you'll learn about later, to implant. The fertilized ovum basically to implant. Okay, so that was that diagram. Now we need to put everything I said into a graph, because you cannot only know the ovarian cycle in isolation, the uterine cycle in isolation, and the hormones in isolation. You need to understand how they all work together and when they work together, okay? And during which time periods. Okay, so if you have to look at this graph, let's look at the bottom. We have a 28 day over here. I want us to divide it into, okay, 0 to day 7. Then day 14, and somewhere here is going to be day 28, day 21, and then we have day 28. Just to bring to your attention, this is saying menses. In South Africa, we use menstruation, so you can please just indicate that when you see this, that it's supposed to be menstruation. Right, now what are we looking at here? This one is the ovarian cycle. Good. This one is the uterine cycle. Then we've got the hormones. This one is the pituitary gland hormones. This one is the ovarian hormones. In here, they've indicated to you because they've given you the labels, but they don't always do that. Okay, but don't worry about it. I'll give you some more information just now. Now, the best way to look at this is to see, remember I told you that the hormones have functions. Okay, so the hormones are stimulating things to happen. So where do we start when we look at this graph? We start at what is happening with the hormones. And where did I say everything begins? In the brain. Pulp, FSH. Where does FSH come from? The brain. Which part of the brain? The pituitary gland. Okay, so we've got the pituitary gland, which is going to secrete FSH. Can you look at this graph? FSH is a little bit elevated. Okay, it's a little bit elevated, it's a little bit raised, it's increased a bit, it's at a higher level, therefore it is doing something. And what does it do? It's stimulating the development of the follicles. Can you see there? The follicle is growing. And when this follicle is growing in the beginning from day 0 to day 7, menstruation is occurring, because you can see estrogen and if you look at these hormones here, estrogen and progesterone are still low, okay, because menstruation is occurring. But now once we reached about day 7, like we explained earlier, I'm going to go faster now because we already explained this again. This growing follicle now, because of follicle stimulating hormone, can you see follicle stimulating hormone increases more? Why? Because it now needs to be developed now at a faster pace, right? This developing follicle needs to become bigger. It becomes a Graafian follicle. This Graafian follicle is going to secrete this lots of estrogen. Can you see there? Lots of estrogen is being secreted, and that estrogen is going to cause the development of the endometrium. Then, when that estrogen peaks, it causes LH to peak, and that's going to cause ovulation to occur, right? LH is going to peak. First, estrogen is going to peak at just before day 14. Then LH is going to peak, and then at day 14, we're going to have ovulation. Then thereafter, we are going to have this little bit of a decrease here. LH is now going to decrease. As it's decreasing, it's going to now stimulate the conversion of the empty Graafian follicle into a corpus luteum. That's the structure over there. And as you can see now, FSH and LH are low. Why? They've now done their function. The follicle developed. The follicle produced an ovum. LH has done its job. Ovulation occurred. It developed a corpus luteum. So now it needs to take a little bit of a backseat. Okay. Now, which hormones come into action? We have progesterone and we have estrogen. Progesterone and estrogen are our hormones that are going to be working here because they are being secreted by the corpus luteum. More importantly, I need you to focus that the corpus luteum secretes progesterone. Large amounts of progesterone. Okay? That is the main event that is occurring here. And as you can see, the endometrium is becoming more glandular and more vascular. It's ready. It's getting ready for possible implantation. Okay. Then what happens around after day 21, like we said at day 23 or so, the corpus luteum starts shrinking. It starts degenerating because now fertilization did not take place. So then progesterone levels are going to drop. Estrogen levels are going to drop. And then we are going to have menstruation again because now there's no progesterone to maintain the endometrium. Okay, now learners mostly get confused because what happens is when they give you a diagram, the examiners can give you anything. They can put all of these four graphs into one place, onto one graph, so they can all overlap each other, or they can do the pituitary hormone separate and the ovarian hormone separate the way it is here. So how do you know the difference between them if they don't label any of them and they ask you to label it? The main thing that you need to identify is that LH only peaks once, and that's at day 14. Estrogen peaks before LH peaks, and also estrogen has 2 peaks. Okay, but the most important one, because they might not show you the second peak, okay, but the most important thing to notice is that estrogen peaks first, and that causes the LH to peak. So that's how you can see the difference between those two graphs. Then the difference between FSH and progesterone, FSH is the one that's going to be increased before day 14, and progesterone is going to be increased after day 14. Okay, so those are just some ways that you can remember the graphs. Now, what's going to happen if fertilization did take place? Okay, remember I told you, let's think about what those hormones do. Let's think about what's going to happen if fertilization does take place. So here we have something very funny with this graph. What do you notice is different about this graph? There's a few clues. Let's look at the ovarian cycle. Let's look at the ovarian hormones. And let's look at the uterine cycle. Right, what's different here compared to the previous one? Firstly, the corpus luteum did not degenerate. Okay, we've got progesterone that is quite high here. Progesterone levels are high. And then we've got in the uterine cycle, we have the endometrium that is also thick. It's still thick, it's still maintained, right, at its thickness. So those are the differences. Why? Because like I said, if the ovum gets fertilized, it's going to travel down the uterus and it's going to want to be implanted. And it needs to be implanted into the endometrium. So the endometrium needs to stay intact. What keeps the endometrium intact? Increased progesterone. So that increased progesterone is going to come from where? The corpus luteum. Therefore, the corpus luteum has to stay big, it has to stay active, it has to continue secreting progesterone. That's what it's doing here. It's secreting progesterone so that progesterone stays high and the endometrium can be maintained, and then we have no menstruation. Okay, So you need to know this. You need to know what happens when fertilization occurs and what happens if fertilization does not occur. Right, now we just move on to this little flow chart. It's just a nice, lovely flow chart that shows us the interaction of the different hormones. Starting at the pituitary gland, that has two secretions. It has FSH, which stimulates the follicle development in the ovary. It secretes estrogen. It causes the thickening of the endometrium. And then we have, it also secretes LH. It causes ovulation. It causes the formation of the corpus luteum, secretes progesterone, and it causes the thickening of the endometrium again. Okay, and then we must remember our POP. That's just a little flow diagram. So you see, there was 4 ways of actually teaching the little bit of the menstrual cycle. Okay, actually there's going to be another one because I'm going to show you a video just now. Now, this comes to the flow chart of the negative feedback of progesterone and FSH. Now, this topic is difficult for learners, okay? But don't be alarmed. Just think about it. Let's think about it, what I told you about earlier, okay? So, fertilization has occurred, okay? The ovum is ready. It's going to move down the uterus. It's going to implant, and things are going to be happening, okay? So, what's going to be happening now in the ovary? What should be happening in the ovary? What is the point of the menstrual cycle? What is the point of the ovarian cycle? Okay, it's supposed to produce ova. But if fertilization has already occurred, do we need to produce ova? No, we don't. So something needs to tell the ovary to stop producing ova, or to stop making follicles, right? To stop producing follicles. Something has to tell it. And what's going to tell it? It's going to be the hormones. Okay, so what is going to stimulate the hormones? Remember, hormones need to get the message somehow. They don't just do what they want to do. Okay, so now in this flow diagram we are starting here, and the biggest key point for you to understand is that it's an increased progesterone. Not just progesterone, an increase in progesterone. An increase in progesterone, high levels of progesterone. Progesterone has increased. You must have indicated that there is now this bigger amount or larger amount of progesterone. That inhibits the pituitary gland, because remember, the pituitary gland is going to secrete hormones. So the high level of progesterone is going to inhibit the pituitary gland to secrete less FSH. Why? Because we don't want follicles to develop. So that less FSH is going to inhibit the follicle developing in the ovary, and that is going to cause a decrease in estrogen. Why? Because where does estrogen come from? The follicle. There is no follicle, so there can be less estrogen. And that is going to inhibit the pituitary gland to secrete less LH. Okay, so now it's going to go back to the pituitary gland so that less LH can be secreted, and that is going to cause no ovulation to occur. Okay, so there's 2 things happening. Progesterone is going to inhibit the pituitary gland to secrete FSH. The decreased estrogen is going to inhibit the pituitary gland from secreting LH, so that if in case something ever has to happen, whatever, but ovulation is not going to occur. Okay, and then I've just put a speech bubble here to explain to you what does secrete mean and what does inhibit mean. Secrete means releasing useful substances, and inhibit means preventing a gland from carrying out its usual function. So we do not say the hormone is inhibited. The hormone cannot be inhibited, okay? The gland is inhibited to secrete a hormone. Okay, so that is the flow chart. Now I've got a little video that I want to play for you. Before I play the video, I just want you to before I play the video, don't be distracted. Don't worry about what's written on the video. Listen and watch what's happening. Okay, it's not going to show us, it's going to show us what's happening in the ovary, but it's not going to show you the whole thing. It's going to show you a bit of menstruation there at the end. It's going to show you what happens to the ovum. Okay, so it's not going to show you the whole menstrual cycle. It's only going to be a part of it. Okay.
When the ovary releases a ripe egg, or ovum, inside the ovary are hundreds of thousands of follicles. Each follicle is a hollow ball of cells with an immature egg in the center. The typical 28-day menstrual cycle begins on the first day of menstrual bleeding. During the first 7 days of the cycle, a few follicles begin to grow at the same time. These maturing follicles secrete estrogen hormone into the bloodstream to prepare the lining of the uterus for pregnancy. Around day 7, all of the follicles stop growing and begin to degenerate, except for one. This dominant follicle continues to grow and nourishes the developing egg inside it. Around day 12, the follicle secretes a large amount of estrogen into the bloodstream. When the estrogen reaches the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland in the brain, the anterior or front part of the pituitary gland releases a huge surge of luteinizing hormone into the bloodstream. Around day 14, luteinizing hormone causes the follicle to undergo a sudden growth spurt. Right before ovulation, the egg detaches from the inside of the follicle. The bulging follicle releases chemicals, causing one of the two fallopian tubes to move in closer and surround the follicle. The follicle swells until it bursts open, ejecting the egg and fluid from the follicle into the abdominal cavity. In response, the fimbriae, tiny projections at the end of the fallopian tube, sweep across the ovulation site and pick up the egg. Microscopic cilia on the fimbriae's surface transport the egg to the entrance of the fallopian tube. Inside the walls of the fallopian tube, muscular contractions gently push the egg towards the uterus. After ovulation, the egg lives for 12 to 24 hours, so it must be fertilized by a sperm from the male during this time for a woman to become pregnant. If it's not fertilized, the egg dissolves away and is shed along with the uterine lining during menstruation.
So as you can see over there, you're going to see the ovum. There's the ovum traveling down the fallopian tube. It's going into the uterus. Still going down the fallopian tube. Entering the uterus. Can you see it over there? It's a little dot that's moving. And then when menstruation is going to occur, there we go, menstruation is occurring and it's going to be expelled together with the endometrium. Right, thank you very much. That's all from me. I'm going to hand over to Agnes. That's going to take you through the questions. So you can take a 5-minute break so you can absorb all of that we have been discussing, and then we will come back and we'll do some questions.
Attitude of gratitude. What does that mean? An attitude of gratitude is the quality of being thankful. It's the quality of giving thanks. Ubonga, ulebuha. It's to be grateful. You and I have so much to be grateful for. You and I have parents who make sacrifices day and night for us to be at school. You and I have people who believe in us when we don't believe in ourselves, who love us when we don't love ourselves, who invest in us day and time again. Whether it's a teacher, it's a principal, it's a driver, it's a guardian, we have so much to be grateful for. And so I challenge you, young person, be thankful, ubonge, lebuha, be grateful each and every single day of your life. Strive to display an attitude of gratitude.
Look at where you have been and ask yourself, am I happy with the results? Look at where you are right now and ask yourself, am I happy with what's going on in my life? What differentiates successful people from unsuccessful people, A students from average students, is the things that we do on an everyday basis. If you want to change your results, you need to take that one thing and repeat it over a period of time until it breeds results. And that is the art of consistency, because consistency breeds success. You have been given power to decide whether you want good results in your life, in your schoolwork, or you want bad results. As Tony Robbins said, it is in the moment of your decision that your destiny is shaped. And your destiny is shaped right now with the decisions that you are currently making in your schoolwork. So decide whether you want to be an A student and start working on it, because there is power inside of you. The infinite power is inside of you, and the time you decide to tap in that power, you will become who you want to become in your schoolwork.
Excellent. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is a quality you have, a quality I have. It's a quality we have when we honor what is true to us. Yes, we are gifted differently. uNkulunkulu akasinganga ngokufana. Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
Where's my... Good day, grade 12 learners. My name is Agnes, and I'm going to take you through the questions. And you are all welcome to this second session. Thank you, Vedika, for the first session. On the slides that Vedika indicated, we had a flow chart there. You can, if it is not clear or if you did not see it clearly, please, you can get that from the study guide, DBE study guide. It is clear there. Right. Before I take you through the possible exam questions, what you need to do as a learner, you need to budget your time for every question. You need also to look at the mark allocation in order for you to answer. Also, you need to look at the action verbs and the key words on the questions. I think that will help you to master the questions. Right, now the question 1 that we have there. Now in our question 1, we do have a diagram. Now I'm going to give you an advice on what to do if you come across any diagram in any topic of grade 12. So for you to answer any question based on the diagram, firstly, you need to study the diagram, analyze, give yourself some questions and answers before you can even attempt any question. So Vedika mentioned earlier on that with the menstrual cycle, it is a very complicated topic and most learners do not understand it. However, it seems to be very, very interesting because this process happens. The system happens in our bodies, that is the female bodies. So it's very, very interesting. Please master every concept there. Now, Vedika mentioned that we've got menstrual cycle that starts from day 1 and up to day 8. Why are we calling this a cycle? Is because from day 28, it must go back to day 1 so that it forms a cycle. And also that she indicated that we have 2 cycles there forming the menstrual cycle, which is the uterine cycle and the ovarian cycle. So it is important to know your hormones. Remember, all the systems in the body work together harmoniously. So we don't have a system that will work and the other one waits. So we have the ovarian cycle working together with the uterine cycle. Now let's go to question 1. Remember I said in the ovarian cycle, you need to know all those hormones. Right? With the direction you said, you need to know the FOLB, your FOLB. That is FSH for F, estrogen for O, luteinizing hormone for L, and the progesterone. Right. Now, question 1. Name the hormone V. You go to your diagram and check for V. This is the hormone V. Now, when the question needs the naming, this is the low order question. It needs understanding because we did the content. Now for 1 mark, what is this hormone called? V is estrogen. Remember, estrogen is there to do what? To help in the thickening of the endometrium. Next question. Remember, I've indicated that you also need to look at your action verbs. To describe, it means you need a lot of thinking. This can be a level B question or a level C question. It depends on how the question is framed. Now describe the effect. Remember, I said you need to check the action verb. You need to check the key words. So you are describing the effect of hormone V has on the lining of the endometrium. What effect does this hormone have on the lining of the endometrium? So it is increasing the thickness of the endometrium. That now you can ask yourself, why the thickening of the endometrium? You have already been taught in the first session that it increases the chances of what? Implantation. It prepares for implantation to take place. Now, explain the importance of the endometrium lining. Remember, we also mentioned that it has got what is rich, supplied with blood vessels, and also it has got the glands. So, the importance of endometrium lining is to provide a place where the embryo implants and the placenta forms. Remember, for menstruation to take place, if fertilization has taken place, what is going to happen to the fertilized ova? It is going to move down, as you have looked in the video there. It goes down. And if fertilization has taken place, that embryo is going to be implanted where? On the endometrium. Therefore, we are saying also the importance of the endometrium lining is responsible to provide what? The place for the implanting of the embryo and also for the formation of the placenta. So we are moving on with our questions. Remember, as you are doing practicing with your past papers, make sure that you get used to comparing these questions, because in this paper it can be asked for this year, the following year it can be asked the other way, but the content is the same. Right, now we have labeled V, hormone V. We also are going to label hormone X. Now you go back to your diagram, you check for X. This is X. Remember, we have indicated that the pituitary gland secretes the hormone LH. Remember that. Now with the pituitary gland, don't forget, where do you find it? At the base of the brain. Something is interesting with the hormones. They are secreted elsewhere, but they are going to function where? At the target organ. Look at pituitary gland. It secretes LH, but then LH is going to help where? In the ovaries. Remember, pituitary gland is found at the base of the brain. Now, what is hormone X called? So, hormone X, I'm sorry for that, is LH, luteinizing hormone. That is for 1 mark. Now, give the functions of the hormone X. In most of the cases, you can be given to identify any part. Now, the follow-up question, most of the times it needs a reason for that. Why are you saying this part is this? So, X is hormone LH or luteinizing hormone for 1 mark. Give functions of hormone X in the menstrual cycle. Now, hormone X in the menstrual cycle, remember that is LH. It is responsible to produce what? It produces to burst the Graafian follicle. Remember we spoke about the Graafian follicle when Vedika was explaining the whole process. So in menstrual cycle, the function of LH is produced to burst the Graafian follicle. Check the mark, the tick there where it is placed. So for 2 marks, if you answer, make sure that you give 2 functions so that you qualify for all the marks. So it is responsible to burst the Graafian follicle to release the ovum, right? Or it stimulates ovulation. Remember, for ovulation to take place, the Graafian follicle need to burst open. Now, when it bursts open, then the ova is going to be released, or it stimulates ovulation. Also, it is responsible for the development of the corpus luteum, right? Now, we're continuing with our questions. Now, we have identified the hormone V. We said it is estrogen. We also checked at the hormone X. We said the hormone X is LH. Now, which hormone is secreted by structure Y? You go back to the diagram. Where is structure Y? This is structure Y, okay? Then for 1 mark, structure Y represents the progesterone. Now, it is important again, in your ovarian cycle, you need to know all the hormones that are secreted. You need to know the functions of all of those hormones, right? Now, the Y represents what? Is progesterone. This is progesterone. Now, if you look at this term, secretion, now everything that is secreted is very, very important to the body. So, name 2 functions of hormone Y. Remember, Y is progesterone. What is the function of hormone Y? The hormone Y is responsible to do what? It prepares for the endometrium for implantation. Remember, should the ova be fertilized, it is going to move down to the uterus. Now, what we are saying in there, we should have the membrane, the endometrium, having what? Being thickened. So as the endometrium is thick, then the embryo is going to be implanted there. So one of the functions of the progesterone is to prepare the endometrium for what? For implantation of the embryo. Now also we say it thickens the endometrium. One might think, what will happen? You can ask yourself, what will happen then if this progesterone is the progesterone level is low? Just think of that. I'll explain that later. But it thickens the endometrium. For which purpose? For the purpose of allowing for implantation to take place. Right, also the progesterone is responsible for maintaining the endometrium, which is the uterine wall. It maintains endometrium, it maintains the thickness. For what? For pregnancy. Remember, the developing embryo should be embedded there, safely there, so that it grows. Remember, we also mentioned that the endometrium has got what? It's supplied with what? It's richly supplied with blood vessels. It is richly supplied with blood vessels, so that also with the glands, we spoke about the glands as well, to say it is the function of what? The progesterone to help in the thickening of the endometrium. Also, we are saying it inhibits the secretion of FSH and formation of the Gravian follicle, or it prevents ovulation. Remember, we mentioned in the first session that should fertilization take place, do you think we can also have the formation of the follicles there? No. If fertilization has taken place, we don't need those follicles, many follicles, to be produced. Right? Now, yes, now we know hormone V, we know hormone X, we know hormone Y. Name the hormone Z. So these are the possible questions that we are going to get. Now with the subject, the life sciences, it's very, very easy, very, very simple. If you study your whole content in reference to the exam guideline and also practicing. So if you practice more of the past papers, you are going to get it. It's simple to get 150 out of 150, don't forget, for each paper. It's simple to get those 300 marks. So now we are naming the hormone Z. Can you see where it is? Now with the hormone Z for 1 mark, hormone Z for 1 mark, we're saying it is FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone. Remember, the pituitary gland, which is found at the base of the brain, secrete FSH, secrete LH. Right? Name one function of FSH. So the function of FSH is to stimulate the growth, or it is responsible for the development of the follicles, right? Now, what will happen to the levels of hormone Z if the bloodstream is the level of the hormone secreted by Y? For 1 mark there, the level of the hormone of FSH there, it will decrease. Okay? Right. Now I have indicated that for you to answer properly and score all those marks, you need to do what? Look at the action verbs, look for the keywords in your question, study the diagram before you can even attempt the questions. Now, the question says, question 2, the graph below, this is the graph, shows the levels of 2 hormones, meaning these 2 hormones are working together. So we are going to check what does that mean in this graph. So the graph shows the level of 2 hormones that are secreted by the pituitary gland during the menstrual cycle. Like we have mentioned that for menstrual cycle to take place, hormones are assisting. Hormones are secreted to ensure that the menstruation, the process takes place. So you need to know the names of those hormones. Right, now let's look at the graph. Now if you look at the graph, it is the hormone levels during a menstrual cycle in 28 days. Now before we can go on with our questions, let's look at the graph. Now with the graph, we have hormone A, we have hormone B. Now let's check. For an example, between day 0 maybe and day 5, let's look at the level of hormone B. Now the level of hormone B here is low. All right, that is between day 0 and day 5 or 6. Right, when you want to get the exact measurements, you need to use your ruler there. Okay, so the levels of hormone B are low there. Then what happens with the level of hormone A? It is a bit higher than of hormone B, where in day 0, between day 0 and day 5. Now let's check the relationship, because we have spoken that these hormones have got a relationship based on the graph that is given. Now from day 9 at this area here, hormone B increases, it spikes. Then what will happen to hormone A? Hormone A, it decreases. Can you see? So as hormone B increases, what happens to the level of hormone A? In this case, it is decreasing. Now in this phase here, we can say is the phase of the preparation of the ova. Now as it is increasing, B is increasing, can you see? It is spiking up, and then also from day 9 up to day 14, what happens? Even the level of hormone A is increasing. Now in this phase between day 9 to 14, this is a period where we can say is the preparation of ovulation. So this area is dangerous, that we used to tell our girls that with this phase between 9 and 14 days is the preparation for pregnancy. So should the egg at this phase be fertilized, what will happen? If the egg is fertilized by a sperm cell, or the sperm cell fuses with the egg cell, what is going to happen? Chances are high that pregnancy will take place, because at this phase the level B hormone is very high. Then what is going to happen? This is the preparation for ovulation. The egg is going to be released, the ova is going to be released. Right, now let's check. Somewhere here after the peak, the hormone B is going to decrease. As it is decreasing, look at hormone A. Hormone A is also decreasing. Then this must tell you that if the graph drops, what is going to happen? So if your graph drops, it means there is no pregnancy. It means the ova was not fertilized. But what will happen? What do you think will happen if the graph goes up or remain constant? It means there should be chances of what? Of pregnancy. Right. Let's attempt the questions. So what I wanted to show you is that before you answer any question, just go through the diagram given, analyze it, but however, look at the mark allocation so that the budgeted time that you have, you don't lose it. Right, state two functions of hormone B. This is hormone B. What are the two functions of hormone B? It stimulates ovulation, as I have indicated earlier on. It stimulates the development of what? The corpus luteum for 2 months. Right? Okay. Then the next question, Explain why a female who is struggling to get pregnant. Explain why a female who is struggling to get pregnant may be given pills containing hormone A as a treatment. Yes, we do have some females that wish to get pregnant. Yes, we do have females that can go or that menstruate, but they don't, there's no chances of pregnancy there. Now, here is a female. The female is struggling to get pregnant, and probably the female consult with a doctor. Then why can that female be given pills containing hormone A as a treatment? Do you understand the question? Right? The pills containing hormone A as a treatment will assist that female in what? Because it has got high concentration of FSH for a mark, and then it will stimulate more follicles to develop, and then more ova will be produced. So if we've got more ova being produced, then it increasing the chances of what? The chances of an individual to get pregnant. Hence, we are assisting with the pills containing the hormone A. Okay, question 2 continues here. Now, still looking at this graph. The graph below shows the levels of 2 hormones. Remember, we spoke about the 2 hormones there in the ovarian cycle. We've got FSH, we have got the LH. Right? Now, the graph below shows the 2 hormones that are secreted by what? By the pituitary gland during the menstrual cycle. So, we have studied the graph together. Now, let us look at the question. Explain why a female who is struggling to get pregnant will have her levels of hormones be constantly monitored. Remember, from day 9 up to 14, we said this is a preparation for ovulation. Now, if that female who is struggling to get pregnant, go for medical attention, and she is given those pills that will have more of FSH, remember in the previous slide. So what will happen? Explain why a female who is struggling to get pregnant will have her levels of hormones B. This is hormone B, remember? Now at this stage, in order for the individual or for that female to get pregnant, the levels must be monitored constantly, because if medically so they did not monitor, it's possible, chances are high that that female won't get pregnant. So medically, that individual need to be monitored. When the monitoring should take place during the ovulation period, where we are saying day 9 up to 14 is the monitoring, or day 9 up to 14 is the preparation of what? The ovulation. So, a peak of hormone B. Now, in the first session, Vedika indicated that as we have a peak of hormone B, what is going to happen? It will indicate that ovulation is about to happen. Remember, that is the preparation phase for what? For ovulation to take place. So, monitoring the hormone B constantly will help the female that is struggling to get pregnant. So, a peak of hormone B will indicate that ovulation is about to happen. Therefore, an ovum will be available for fertilization. All right? Right. Now, the questions are continuing there to say, explain how the level of hormone A on day 0 to day 5, somewhere here, 5 is here. Explain how the levels of hormone A on day 0 to 5 will differ in a pregnant woman. Now, let's look at the answer. The levels will remain low. Remember, we are explaining what? The hormone A. The levels will remain low because of what? There's high progesterone levels during pregnancy. And that will inhibit what? The pituitary gland from secreting FSH. Question 3 is as follows for 5 marks. Also, look at question 3 is for 5 marks. Now we are expecting you to give us how many points? 5 points. Or you can even give more than that so that you get the 5 marks. So you are describing secretion of ovarian hormones and their roles in the menstrual cycle. So for menstrual cycle, what do you need to know? Names of the hormones. What do you need to know? Where are they secreted? What else do you need to know? Their functions. So in these questions, you are only describing the discretion of the ovarian hormones and their role in the menstrual cycle for 5 marks. Now, I'm going to encourage you, when you answer questions like this, because you are describing, maybe for you to get those marks easily, do not write in essay format. You can write in point form. Why are we writing in point form? Remember, you must write the cause and the effect, the cause and the effect. So you are not likely to lose marks there. So I'm going to encourage you to write, to not write on essay forms, just use the pointing system. Right? Describe the secretion of the ovarian hormone and their role in the menstrual cycle. Number 1, yes, we know the hormones that are secreted there. Right, we've got the Graafian follicle, we've got the corpus luteum. Obviously, if you know their functions, then you're going to score all the marks. So the Graafian follicle there secrete the hormone estrogen. Now, what is the function of the hormone estrogen? Is to thicken the endometrium, right? So the Graafian follicle will secrete what? Estrogen. And what will happen to the estrogen? It thickens the lining of the endometrium there. Remember, we've got uterine cycle, we've got the ovarian cycle. Now, we also have the corpus luteum. What is the function of the corpus luteum? It secretes progesterone. Then you must know, when progesterone is secreted, what is its function? Where is it going to function? So progesterone is going to further increase the thickness of the endometrium. Now look at this mark allocation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is why I've said you can provide more answers there, but we need to read into the causes and the effects of that. So for 5 marks, that is the response there. Right, the next question. This diagram represents some changes that occur in the human body during the menstrual cycle. Changes taking place in the human female body during menstrual cycle. Remember here, we are not looking at the physical changes. Yes, we know some during their menstrual cycle, during that period day 1 to 7. Some females will have those mood swings. We're not talking about that now. Some females will even get sick during that period. You can ask yourself, why? Right? Now we spoke about estrogen. We spoke about progesterone that prepares the thickening of the endometrium. So imagine what will happen to the female body if the endometrium walls, are being removed. They slough off. They tearing apart. So during that process, when they tear apart, what will happen? Obviously, the individual will feel pains during the sloughing off of the membrane. But it depends from person to person. Some females don't have any negative impact due to the menstruation taking place. So we respond differently as females, right? Now the letters A to D represents the hormones. We spoke a lot about the hormones in the previous slides, okay? So we've got pituitary gland there, we've got A, B, we've got the Graafian follicle, we've got our C and our D, we've got the ovum, we've got the endometrium. Remember, when we were doing the graphs there, we have got a cycle that starts from 0, day 1 up to day 28. If you can look here, the endometrium, the thickening of the endometrium is thickening. Now, as Vedika was talking about the thickening of the endometrium, somewhere we said if they remain, the thickness is maintained, the possibility is fertilization has taken place. All right? Now, let's look at the questions. Determine the duration of the menstrual cycle according to this diagram. Now, in most of the cases, questions that are going to be asked are based on what is given, right? Now you need to know parts, you need to know to label, you need to know the functions. So if a diagram is given, a scenario is given, what will happen? Questions are going to come out of that. Other questions are going to test the content learned for that topic. Right, now determine the duration of the menstrual cycle according to this diagram is 28 for 1 mark. Now for 2 marks, name 2 organs of the female reproductive system that shows changes during menstrual cycle. Can you name those? I'm waiting. Yes, I know you can name those. The 2 organs of the reproductive system that shows changes during the menstrual cycle is the ovary, is the uterus. How many ovaries do we have? Yes, in the video you have seen the 2 ovaries there, you have seen the fallopian tube there, right? We have the uterus. Now those are the organs of the female reproductive system that shows changes during the menstrual cycle. Name the hormone D. Now you go to the diagram, you look at the hormone D, right? Now hormone D is estrogen. Remember, the function of the estrogen is to do what? Is to thicken the endometrium walls. Or if we go back to the progesterone, it maintains the thickening of the endometrium. Right, now the questions are continuing. State 2 functions of hormone B. Remember, where is hormone B? This is hormone B. Okay, state 2 functions of hormone B as indicated in the diagram for 2 marks. Now, we spoke about LH. So B is our LH. It stimulates what? Ovulation. So as the level of the LH peaks, it stimulates what? Ovulation. It stimulates the development also of the corpus luteum, right? Now, give 1 visible reason. So reasons can be all correct, but this time we want the visible one that you can see on the diagram. So if you give out a reason which is out of the scope or which is not on this diagram, then you are going to lose marks. So give one visible reason from the diagram that suggests that fertilization has occurred. Right? Now, for fertilization to occur, remember, we've got the uterine cycle, we've got the ovarian cycle. Right, candidates? Now, give a visible reason. We say the corpus luteum remain intact for 1 mark. Okay. Now, the next question, we are going to look at, this question was taken out from the DBE paper 1, November 2023. Okay. So we have learned about menstrual cycle. We have learned about the 2 cycles, which is the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle that are taking place for menstrual cycle to take place. So we spoke about the possibility, the high chances of pregnancy. So it doesn't mean during ovulation all females will get pregnant. Only when the ova is fertilized, then we can talk about pregnancy. And immediately when there is pregnancy, we know there are hormones that needs to prepare. Where? At the uterine cycle. Where exactly? Preparing the thickening of what? The endometrium. Now, extras can be given, like we have spoken about, the graphs can be given, tables can be given, any scenario can be given. Right now, we've got an extract. Okay? So in most of the cases, if you are given the extract, for an example, what you need to know, you must read with understanding there, because some of the questions, I want to assure you, you're going to get the answers from the extract. Yes, some of the questions are going to test you on the concepts, on the content learned for that topic. So let's read together from that extract so that we answer the questions. Right, the ovarian cysts. This is a new word, it's a cyst. The ovarian cysts are fluid-filled structures that develop inside the ovaries of some women, of some, not all, of some women. Now, the 2 most types of cysts we've got in women of reproductive age are follicular cyst and corpus luteum cyst. Remember, with this cyst, they do not affect all the females, they do not affect all the women. It's some, right? Now, the follicular cysts, what happens? They develop when a Graafian follicle fails to rupture. You can even underline as you are reading your extracts or whatever information is given before you answer your questions. Right? Now it fails to rupture and release the ovum. Okay? Now the follicle continues to grow. That follicle will continue to grow. Now as it continues to grow, what will happen? It will grow because of continued hormonal stimulation. Okay? Now a corpus luteum cyst does not degenerate, as Vedika mentioned in our first presentation, even when a person is not pregnant. Okay? A corpus luteum cyst does not degenerate even when a person is not pregnant. Let's continue. So, the women often show no symptoms if they have that cyst. Remember, we spoke about follicular cyst, we spoke about the corpus luteum cyst. Now, women often show no symptoms. Okay? You can't tell whether this person, whether this woman has got a cyst or not. So they don't show any symptom and the cysts disappear. But in the rare cases, ovarian cysts keep on increasing in size. It keeps on increasing in size, right? A very large cyst can cause intense pain. So remember, we are saying it is growing and growing and growing. Then what will happen to the female? So what the extract is telling us is that a very large cyst can cause intense pain and may rupture, leading to internal bleeding. So such cysts will require surgical removal. Okay? Now this is an example where I'm going to show you the ovary. Remember, the ovarian cyst. We've got 2 ovaries here, but look at the cyst is growing. So if it is growing and growing and growing, this will lead to what? To severe pain. And also it can cause internal bleeding, and that is dangerous. So what will happen to this individual who has got a cyst growing and growing and growing? Then this must be surgically removed, nothing else. Okay? Now let's look at the questions. Remember, we have read the extract, so some of the questions you are going to get them from the extract. Some of the questions you need to know the content that you were taught. Now, from the extract, give 2 structures where in the ovary that may develop into cyst. Do you remember those? Okay. Right? Is the Graafian follicle and also the corpus luteum. Okay? From the extract, give 2 symptoms associated with very large cyst. For 2 marks, we have got 2 symptoms associated with a very large cyst. Is intense pain, we read about it from the extract, and also what? Internal bleeding. So it's true that you read with understanding, because questions, you're going to get some answers from the extract or from the data given. Okay? Now, the next question for 1 mark, name the hormone responsible for the growth of follicle under normal conditions. Now we have FSH there. We've spoken a lot about the function of the FSH. And name the hormone that will be high in concentration in blood of women where follicular cysts develop. So you name the hormone that will be high in concentration. Now for 1 mark, it can be the estrogen. Remember, it's for 1 mark. So it can either be estrogen, it can either be LH, it can either be FSH. So you don't need to mention all of them. Remember, you look at the mark allocation, so you can only give 1 of those. Do you understand? Okay. Now, give a reason. Remember, in 2B, we spoke about the estrogen, we spoke about the LH, we spoke about the FSH in 2B, in the previous question. Give a reason for that in 2B, right? If it is estrogen, remember you mentioned the estrogen. Give a reason for your answer. Why did you say estrogen? The Graafian follicle keeps on producing estrogen, or it fails to rupture. Okay? Now, if you said LH, remember, the reason would be the increased release of estrogen stimulates what? The secretion of LH. If you have mentioned maybe the FSH, now you can't give a reason for FSH on the estrogen. Remember, you can't give the reason for FSH when you have spoken about the LH. So, if you have spoken about the FSH, excess secretion of FSH can cause what? The failure to ovulate or Graafian follicle to rupture. Right? Now let's look at the following question. Explain why women will not be able to fall pregnant. If she has corpus luteum cyst, that does not disappear. Here is a woman, has got a cyst, the cyst does not disappear, And it is likely to do what? To increase in size, keep on increasing. Now, in the extract, we said it can increase in size, and it might rupture. It might cause what? The pain. It might cause what? Internal bleeding. Then what is going to happen, right? We are explaining here. Explain why a woman will not be able to fall pregnant if she has corpus luteum cyst that does not disappear. So, the corpus luteum does not generate. Remember, we are saying a woman will not fall pregnant. Then you are explaining why that woman cannot fall pregnant if that woman has got a cyst. So the reasons are as follows. The corpus luteum does not generate and it keeps on secreting progesterone. What is the function of the progesterone? Remember, you go back to functions of the hormones, right? And this will inhibit the pituitary gland. It will stop the pituitary gland from secreting FSH. Remember the function of the FSH? It helps in the production of what? The follicles. So for this woman not to fall pregnant, what are we saying? The corpus luteum does not generate. It keeps on secreting what? Hormone progesterone, and this will inhibit the pituitary gland from secreting what? The FSH. Therefore, no follicle will develop and no ovulation will take place. So again, with such questions, write in point form so that you are able to see that you can score all the marks there. Okay? Right. We are done with, trying to assist you to answer the possible questions that you can get from your exams. I know right now you are preparing to write your term 1 test. You are going to get such questions. Like I have been telling you that you need to get various question papers. You can also get them, compare them from all the provinces. You start from Gauteng, you start from the DBE question papers as well. So good luck as you are preparing for your formal test this term, hoping that you are going to do well in your June exam as well, in your prelim and at the end of the year. Good luck as you are preparing yourself for all of this in terms of the future. The future holds best for you. So this is the end of session 2 of the menstrual cycle. Thank you.